listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
The GM Shuffle Week 12 Harbaugh Bowl here in Los Angeles. Of course, the Ravens in town to take on Harbaugh and the Chargers. Michael Lombardi, the big guy. Week 12 off of Russo on Friday. We need the Ravens coming up tonight, but we're going to start with the NFC East here. And it's kind of settled down near you in Philly with the Eagles, a 37-20 winner over, of course, the Rams last night. They do cover the 3. Barkley went nuts. He's now in the MVP conversation. Michael, that's 7 straight for your boy Sirianni and the Eagles.
Yeah, since he's gotten a buzz cut. I mean, they're really happy about that. They think it all has to do with the haircut. I'm not sure about that. I think it all has to do with the fact that, this franchise has figured out. I mean, look, let's be clear here. When they went to the Super Bowl in 2022, they could run the football effectively. That's who they were. It was a 6-back offense. They had Miles Sanders, they had Gainwell, they had other backs on the team, but Boston Scott. But at the end of the day, it was Hurts running. He had 13 touchdowns. It was Miles Sanders. He had 11 touchdowns, and so I think to me that they've now become a run team. I think that's pretty clear. And Barkley's been dynamic. I mean, I think he belongs. Don't you in this conversation?
I do.
I mean, because look, I think if you take him off this team, I'm not saying the Eagles wouldn't be a good team because they are a good team. But to me, they're 32nd in the National Football League in passing attempts. They're 25th in yards passing. I mean, now where they're great is they're 9th in yards per attempt. They make the most of what they do. But this offense is completely centered around the offensive line and their ability to run the football with Barkley carrying the load. And it's made them a better defense. It's made them a better offense. They're tough. I thought it was interesting last night. Collinsworth was talking about, well, this is going to be a matchup of 2 tough teams, and we're going to find out who's the toughest. Wait a minute. Let's take a step back here. The Rams, before the bye, barely beat Seattle, up in Seattle. And even Sean McVay said that was a lucky game, right? I mean, they didn't play well. Seattle stupidly tried to go for it on 4th down and kicking the field goal in overtime, and they lost the game. Then they come back and play Miami on Monday night off the bye. They get the shit kicked out of them. Miami's defensive line destroyed them. Now, they were beat up in the offensive line at that point, but they didn't play well. They go back and play New England. It's a 28-22 game. New England's driving to come down the field, and he throws the interception. New England moved the ball on them the whole game. They never really had control of that game with their defense. So, I'm missing, when did the Rams start playing good? Right? I know they won 4 of their last 5, but when did they actually start playing good? To me, I thought the line was too low. The Eagles were by far the better team, and they came out there and they kicked their ass, and they really did. And one thing I think about Philly that you don't really see is the longer the game goes, their physicality wears on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really becomes something that you're going to have to get used to because they're going to beat up on you for a while. And those 4-yard gains become 8. And then next thing you know, they have TS 2 long runs and the game's over.
Yeah, he is. That team is tough. Brandon Graham, by the way, who was good in the game last night, he goes down with a torn bicep, so he's done for the season. But Barkley ran for scores of 70 and 72, had a total of 302, 12th player in NFL history to top 300 in a game, 255 on the ground. So again, squarely in the MVP conversation. And the juxtaposition, watching what's happening with the Giants. Well, we could talk about the Jets as well. Barkley may seal Dayball's fate and Shane's fate because the idea that Meagher was on that Hard Knock saying, dude, you get rid of this guy and he kills us. I'm not going to be happy. And Barkley's going nuts. So
the thing I don't understand is Russo on Friday was defending the hell out of the Giants, defending them to the
playing this more times.
You got to give them more time. You just can't let them do. You got Mike. You're being unfair. You're being he's telling me I'm unfair, right? And so I'm like, wait a minute. Evan Neal can't play. He was a first-round pick, right? Banks can't play. He was a first-round pick. John Michael Schmidt, watch what Vita Vea does to him in the game. He gets driven back. He talked about repairing the offensive line all offseason. They suck up front. Tommy DeVito, he almost got killed in that game. So, okay, it's only year 3. Wait a minute. They didn't pick Daniel Jones. They didn't pick that. Wait a minute. Who signed Daniel Jones to the $40 million? Did some fucking ghost come in and sign Daniel Jones? Like, did some ghost come in? Like, it's like, oh, okay, I got it. We got a ghost to the building. Some idiot signed Daniel Jones to 40. Like, who okayed that? If I'm Joe Shane and John Mara comes to me and says, we're going to sign Daniel Jones, and I'm the GM, I'm saying, well, look, you want to sign him, that you own the team, but I'm violently against this. Like, this is ridiculous. You got to take a stand on something. You can't be a milquetoast. It's ridiculous. So he's defending him on Friday, and then they come out lackluster. They go 23-0 at the half to Tampa Bay. They made Tampa Bay's offense look like they're great. How about this, Patrick? All they talked about, we got Brian Burns. Look, we're going to be able to rush the passer. Great. You got 38 sacks or whatever they have. You know how many interceptions they have? One interception. They can't make a play on a ball, right? They can't stop anybody from run defense. And then the worst part afterwards, not only is the Barkley thing embarrassing, I mean, John Mara's got to sit in his beautiful home up there in Westchester, and he's got to come home from getting his ass kicked 30-7, and then he's got to turn on his TV and watch Barkley run up and down the field. Like, how do you tolerate that? Like, he basically told them, don't lose the guy. And they lost him because we could sign Singletary. We'll sign him, and we won't miss a beat. And then the audacity of Russo, he comes on the show and says, well, the Giants wouldn't be any good if they had Barkley anyway. He just dismisses it like he was a nothing burger. The guy averages 6.2 a carry. He wouldn't be good for the Giants, but he would have made the Giants a better team. That's a fact. Like, what is, how do people get this? Like, I don't understand how this happens. Like, how do you get to become, like, I never thought he would be like on the Giants side. That's remarkable to me. Like, they got people out there shilling. The other thing is they had this whole conversation. Remember when Stephen A. went out and defended it? And then Pat Hanlon's coming out saying, well, we didn't call anybody at ESPN complain. The Giants, that's all they do is complain when they get bad press. That's all they do. They complain. Do you realize this? This is what people don't understand. I went back. I keep doing this, and nobody hears it. During the year when they lost to McVay, when they lost the Miracle at the Meadowlands, that team over the last 10 years before that Miracle in the Meadowlands, which was the play that saved their franchise. Really, it saved their franchise because that play was so bad that Wellington Mara and Tim Mara, who weren't getting along, Pete Rozelle came in and said, fellas, we need to fix the team. We're going to hire George Young. I want you to hire George Young. They were 37% win percentage. John, this team here the last 10 years is 35% win percent. They're worse than they were back in the Miracle. But nobody's coming in to have the intervention. Nobody has enough balls to come in and say it. You know why I think they won't fire Daboll and Shane? Because I don't think they want the pressure on them by the media or by the fans to hire Belichick. Now, and I'm not saying Belichick would go there. I'm not saying that at all because I don't believe he would. I believe there's too much dysfunction within that place for anybody to go in there and rescue it. When you look at the last 10 years, you have to evaluate that. But to me, I think if you don't have a coaching open, the pressure's not on you. Like when Parcells got the Jet job, there was this campaign because Kotite was so bad that there was a campaign that if Leon Hess didn't hire Parcells, the New York was going to go berserk. And he did. It's the same thing in New York.
But let me ask you, a 30-7 loss at home. The Giants, that's their 6th straight loss at home. They were coming off a bye, listless, new quarterback, no juice. You think they stick with Shane and Daboll? I don't know how American do it.
Well, when Chris Russo, Mad Dog, comes out and says, they're not firing him, Mike. They're not going to fire him, Mike. They're not going to fire him. So he obviously knows something from somebody. And then I hear other people in the league say they're not going to fire him. I'm like, what are we kidding ourselves? Like, I'm not trying to get I haven't talked to Brian in a while because obviously I'm not a fan of what they're doing. So he doesn't want to hear what I have to say. But the biggest problem with Brian, the year they went to the playoffs, he was the head coach. He coached the team. Now he's trying to call plays. He demoted himself. Why would you become an offensive play caller when you can't run the goddamn team? You got players in the locker room saying we didn't give 100%. How do you bring a coach back when the players in the locker room are screaming they didn't play 100%? How about neighbors after the game? You want to know why you don't draft a receiver when the rest of your team isn't good? Because you got what happens there's evidence number one. I'll put that into court. He's fucking miserable. He wants the ball. When I'm watching that game yesterday on the couch, right? And they start throwing the ball to neighbors on the first play of the second half, the second play. I mean, I said he bitched in the locker room. That's when you know you got a fucked up team. Like, it's not about winning. It's about give me the ball.
So, and this is what happens when you actually say shit and you're a person of prominence. Maybe you won't hear from Daboll until a little while now because you've actually been critical of the organization. How can we not? They're a 2-9 team. They were just coming off a bye. They got killed by Baker Mayfield. He had no weapons. Tampa's offense looked legit. I mean, that is, it's stark. If you look at it, Tampa's a 5-win team.
It was embarrassing. Patrick, the game was over at halftime. It was 23. Like Millie said to me, can we get it off one of the boxes? Can you get it off one of the boxes? Like, I didn't even know how to get it off a box. Like, it was haunting me. I couldn't get rid of it. You know, it was like fucking haunting me. Like, how do I get it out of this box? Like, I was trying to get the Colt game on. And then, you know, what happens is if the game is on in your market, you can't really put that game in many multi-views on YouTube. But if it's not in your market, you can get it in all these. And who wants to watch that crap? Like, seriously, it was brutal. But see, I think, Brian, to me, I would say to him, look, you got hired to be a head coach. Why did you demote yourself? Why are you calling plays? The team needs a head coach. What that locker room was saying was, we got nobody leading us. We got nobody driving us. You're calling plays. Big deal. You've had 4 games. You've scored less than 10 points this year. You're the worst offense in football. You've turned it over 7 times in the red zone. Like, you can't get, like, seriously, fire yourself and go become a head coach. The year they won, he was a head coach. They managed the game, but, you know, he lost control of it.
Well, the Giants are officially on Millie's list. So you've done it.
Get them off that list.
And I want to come back. We'll come back and continue with the NFC East. There's so much to get to with Week 12, including tonight here in Los Angeles. But I do want to follow up with Belichick, because we have been led to believe the one organization outside the Pats that he cares about is the Giants. But there's dysfunction. Will Daboll and Shane return? We got a Russo impersonation in the first break. GM shuffle off to a flying start. We're back.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Okay, welcome back to the GM Shuffle, presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. GM Shuffle, the big guy, Michael Lombardi. Tonight, we conclude Week 12 upsets. Houston upset by the Titans, of course, and the Commanders going the wrong way in division. Let's stay in division. They're on Millie's list. All of a sudden, Russo loves the Giants. He never cared about the Giants until you started actually being pragmatic about this organization. Daniel Jones is waived. They come off a bye. They looked like trash yesterday against a depleted Tampa Bay team. So I'm going to ask you this, because I want to ask about the Belichick piece as well. If Meagher called you and said, Michael, we want your counsel. How do we fix this team? Where do you start?
Well, I would tell him, I said, John, I think what you need to be is the president. And I think you need to hire somebody and give him complete control of the organization, general manager, and basically make everybody who's in the organization right now reapply for their jobs. Because this isn't just a coaching problem. This isn't just on Daboll. You've had Daboll, Judge, Pat Shurmur, and Ben McAdoo, and then you had Tom Coughlin. You got a lot of people in that organization that have been there a long time. And there tends to be some complacency because everybody knows it doesn't matter if we win or not. I keep my job. The coaches get fired. I don't. So you make everybody reapply for their job to make people accountable, to know there's going to be accountability moving forward. And then you come in and do the same thing George Young did, as you say, here's who we're going to become. We're going to become this football team, and we're going to build a grading system that's around it. We're going to value offensive linemen. We're going to build the best 2 lines in football, offense and defense. We got a good start with the defensive front, and we're going to get a good quarterback, and we're going to manage our cap more effectively, and we're not going to over-evaluate our own players. I mean, there's a procedure that you have to go through, but it's hard. It takes time. It's a building block operation, which I don't see any building block in Joe Shane. Oh, you got to give him more time, Mike. No, you don't get him more time. I've seen enough of Joe Shane, Evan Neal, John Michael Schmidt. He can't pick offensive linemen. I mean, Greg, they got Van Roten. Yeah, Van Roten tried to speak in a team meeting, and Brian Burns said, no, we don't need some, we don't need, like, can you imagine they have the side of the Raider line? That's how they thought they improved. I mean, that line yesterday got the shit kicked. Vita Vea just picked them up and threw them all back. Now, he does that to everybody, but that's how you have to do it. Then you hire a coach who fits your philosophy. I mean, basically, if they read the walls of the building, they know how to do it. They just don't want to do it because they're convincing themselves they know exactly how good they think they got it turned around. It's the coach's fault. We got better players. No, it's not the coach's fault. It's an institutional problem there. When you have an institutional problem, you got to start over. You got to hold everybody accountable. You got to recalibrate the organization. Make people reapply for their jobs if they want them, because sometimes their work ethic indicates they don't really want them.
Vrabel's going to get a job. Belichick's going to be coaching next year. I'd be shocked if he isn't. He loves the Giants. Why wouldn't Bill go there?
Because I think, one of the things I think most people lose sight of is they think of how bad it's been and they look forward as opposed to understanding why it's been bad, right? Why have they been so bad for so long? They're a family-run business. They have a lot of family within it, and even though as much as you want to love the family, and they're probably great people, they haven't made good decisions. And you got a lot of people there that really don't know what's going on. I think they hired Shane to recalibrate their organization, but he's not qualified. He's not capable of doing it. I mean, he's not capable of doing it. He doesn't have enough leader. Just watch Hard Knocks to know he doesn't have enough leadership skills to do it. He can't command the room. He can't walk in there and say, this is who we're going to be, goddammit, and this is how we're going to do it. And coaches, you're going to coach this team, and the head coach is going to demand from the assistant coaches, and we're going to build a program around that. He's not doing that. He's over there. What would we look like if we signed Brian Burns? What would we look like if we did? Right. Like, seriously, you're playing Madden in your basement. Give me a fucking break. So I can't speak for Bill. He can only speak for himself. But I think Bill's going to want to go somewhere where you have a chance to develop the whole landscape. I mean, if you take the Giant job, they're not getting rid of anybody in their front office. Those scouts are going to be there for the next 10 years. They know it. But they don't, and they're going to grade players. And then the next coach is going to get fired. I mean, there's got to be radical changes to what you do when you're this bad. There has to be. You have to make radical changes. You have no philosophy. You have no beliefs. You have no organizational, this is who we are. They've not one time during that Hard Knocks did I ever hear him say, how do we beat Philadelphia? Meanwhile, Philly's kicking the ass with the Giant formula. Good offensive line and their running back. How about that? They just took the Giant formula, and this isn't even what the Eagles want to do, just so we know this. Jeffrey Lurie would rather throw the ball on every play. Right? They're 32nd in passing attempts this year because that's how they have to win. That's what I would do.
That's exactly what they're doing. They just won their 7th straight. Jerry on Thanksgiving week, Michael, picked up a dub at the Commanders. Huge number, 10-10.5, 34-26. The teams combined for scored 31 points in the final 4 minutes, the most in an NFL game in more than a decade. That was crazy. But the big story here, I don't know if it's the rib injury, but there has been a regression from Jaden, and the Commanders starting to come back to what the preseason prognosticators thought here. What'd you take away from the Commanders' loss at home?
Well, look, the Commanders, when they can't play from in front, it exposes their weaknesses on defense. And even though the Cowboys suck on offense, they were able to actually run the football effectively in the game. I mean, the last quarter, to score that many points in the final 4 minutes of the game, first of all, if you're Dan Quinn, okay, I'm sitting here in Ocean City, and I know if I was the head coach of the Washington Commanders for an hour, for 10 minutes, my first rule would be whenever we play the Cowboys, I don't want the ball kicked to Turpin. I don't want it kicked to him. He's the only guy on their team that can make an explosive play besides CD Lamb. And CD needs the quarterback to get him the ball. But Turpin doesn't need Cooper Rush to get him the ball. Why would you ever kick the ball to Turpin? Why? I'd rather kick it out of bounds and give him the ball in the 40 than kick it to Turpin. Because Cooper Rush ain't getting 2 first downs. Have you ever seen a quarterback with a worse arm in all of your life than Cooper Rush? I mean, I'm counting the seconds as the ball's traveling in the air. Like, I don't know how they went to practice and watched Cooper Rush. How bad must Trey Lance be if you're watching Cooper Rush? I mean, seriously, he must be horrendous. Like, at least Trey Lance throws a fastball. This guy doesn't even throw a changeup. It's a fucking goddamn, it's a little league pass. I've seen high school kids with better arms than Cooper Rush. Seriously. All due respect to Cooper, but so I think a couple things about Washington. right? They ran into that Pittsburgh buzzsaw. Pittsburgh defended them, and since that Pittsburgh game, they have struggled mightily.
Yep.
Daniels, he was able to run the ball yesterday, but they have struggled, and they haven't had an answer for the Pittsburgh game plan. And then I think their defense just isn't good enough. But when you scored, what the Cowboys scored 37, they scored 14 on kickoff returns.
Well, don't worry, America. Coming up on Thanksgiving, we do have the Giants at the Cowboys.
So I feel bad for Brady. He's going to have to talk for 3.5 hours about this mess. Seriously. I mean, Tommy DeVito getting his ass kicked, watching over there, trying to handle Mike Zimmer's double A gap. Look, I thought Dallas played their best game defensively that I've seen them play. I know they gave up the shitty play to McLaurin at the end of the game, but that was the best I've seen Dallas play in a while. Parsons was into the game. They rallied. They played as good as they can play. And Washington turned the ball over. Let's face it. They made the mistakes that they weren't making. But look, whatever we want to say about Washington, they're not ever going to be where they need to be right now, right? I mean, Washington is ahead of schedule. They are so far ahead of where anybody thought they would be. They just need to keep getting better and stop worrying about making the playoffs. Stop worrying about Daniels being Rookie of the Year. Just focus on how do we get better this week.
Speaking of which, Bo Nix in the market has caught up to June Daniels. No surprise. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Another shocker, so we'll move on from the NFC East here, GM Shuffle. Another shocker, we have to have a bigger Texans conversation as they fall at home 32-27. Fairbairn, the 28-yarder missed to tie it up. The one thing I'll say about the Titans, their offense stinks, not necessarily yesterday, but consistently the Titans have played good defense this year, and they pick up they were 8-point dogs in this one, a big win over the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that, this is the best I've seen Will Levis play. I really did. I thought that was the best he played in the game. He made some great throws. Ridley was good. Look, let's have a harder conversation about this team at Houston. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it yet. But let's be clear. I mean, this offensive line for the Texans has been really bad, and it's affected their quarterback. I mean, it has affected C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud is in a sophomore slump. I know nobody in the national media will talk about it, but he's not playing well at all. I mean, he's not playing well. When you go through it and you look at his numbers and you see where he ranks in terms of quarterback, he's 28th in the league. I mean, he's slightly ahead of Will Levis when you go through adjusted EPA, when you go through success rate, expected completion, CPOE, air yards, all that stuff, and you come up with a total number, he's 28th in the league. I mean, Daniel Jones and Drake May are ahead of him. Aaron Rodgers is ahead of him. I mean, he's not playing good. But in fairness to the kid, this is because this offensive line is really not good. And this is another team, I think, Patrick, that when you look at the one-loss record, like there's a reality. I get what Parcells said, your record is what it says it is. But I think there's a reality to how good you are. This is a 7-5 team that I think they could have lost to Buffalo, which they should have. They had an opportunity. Indianapolis in both games had a chance to win both games. They couldn't do it. They beat up on Dallas, and even though it was a 34-10 game, it wasn't a very pretty game. So I think they're really now they have a bye. They go Jacksonville, then they have a bye. They come back, play Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore, and then they finish up with Tennessee. So they're going to get 2 more wins. They're going to be a 9-8 team, Patrick.
No, absolutely. And they couldn't run the football. They couldn't run the football. That offensive line, it's the pass protection's bad. 2 picks from Stroud. There is a regression. There just is. You can't sugarcoat it.
And I think that Bobby Slovic, the offensive coordinator, he's a little bit above his skis. I mean, I know he got interviewed for head coaching jobs last year, but he's no more ready to be a head coach than he is. He's got to improve. Like, he hasn't diversified his portfolio. Like, you can't run what you ran last year. Like, you got to be creative and change and come up with different ways. And he's just too basic in what they're doing. And he needs some help. I mean, they need some help on the offensive staff because people have read their mail. They have really read their mail. And when you look at it, I mean, think about this. You're 7-5, and Fairbairn has made 12 field goals of over 50 yards. 12. That's 36 points, right? Now, he's missed 2 inside of 30.
When we come back, GM Shuffle, the Vikings, they survive against the Bears. The Chiefs, they survive against the Panthers. The Seahawks, a good performance against the Cards. And I do have a legit question. Is Antonio Pierce still the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders? We have to answer that coming back. GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
GM Shuffle, the big guy Michael Lombardi. So week 12 concludes tonight. We're on the Ravens, laying 2.5 at the Chargers here. SoFi. We've got Thanksgiving with Detroit hosting Chicago, 10.5. The Giants at the Cowboys. Let's go, America. 4 on Dallas. Miami at Green Bay. Pretty good one. 3.5, 3 in the market as well on Green Bay. Black Friday, indeed, depressing with the Raiders at the Chiefs, though the Raiders did beat the Chiefs last year towards the end of the year. I think that was on Christmas. Michael, let's talk about the Raiders. They got handled. Minshew broke his collarbone by Bo Nix and the Broncos. Legitimate question. Has anybody been overmatched like Antonio Pierce coaching? Again, they got rid of McDaniels. Everything was fixed. The team wanted Pierce. I don't even know if he wants the job at this point. This is getting...
Nobody likes getting interviewed at halftime. I saw him. He was so smiling, talking to Melanie Collins. He couldn't control himself. Like, I thought did you just win the game? You know, I mean, it is embarrassing, Patrick. I mean, he's one of the 32 guys in the National Football League. I mean, first of all, the defense has gotten worse. They've gotten worse on defense. And he's supposed to be a defense coordinator. He's supposed to be has defensive acumen. Look, take nothing away from how about the difference between Sean Payton and Antonio Pierce? Could you imagine if I'm Mark Davis, I'm watching this game and I'm seeing Bo Nix, who we wouldn't draft. We need a quarterback, but we couldn't draft Bo Nix because if we drafted Bo Nix, we don't have anybody who can coach him, right? So, you know, and only Sean saw Bo Nix for what he was. See, Bo Nix is the perfect example of scouting in terms of being able to see what other people don't see, right? It's called the projection scout. There's 3 kind of scouts: the poor scout, the production scout, the picking scout, and then the projection scout. You see a player's skill set and you say, I can make this player's skill set fit what I do, and I project him forward. That's what Sean did with Bo Nix. No one else could do it. All the DraftKings said he was an idiot, right? They said he couldn't do it. His ego was involved. He's going to do this. No, that's not the case, right? Dayball's supposed to be a good quarterback guru. He didn't see it with Bo Nix, right? He didn't see it, right? All these teams that thought they can evaluate quarterback. Raiders obviously didn't see it, right? They didn't see it. So for me, I think to me, the area is with this Raider team is I don't know how you're going to beat Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh with Antonio Pierce. But they say he's coming back. Everybody I talked to said he's completely in. I mean, if there ever was a coach in over his head, it's pretty clear he is. I mean, he and Mayo are the two that are really bad. You know, I mean, and Mayo had the quote of the day yesterday when Mayo said, well, I can't control what happens once they go on the field. Oh, okay. All right. Well, there you go. Yeah, you didn't see that quote? He said, I can't. Once they go in between the white lines, that's it. No coach can control that. Basically saying it ain't my fault. I mean, oh, my God. That's called leadership? I mean, Antonio Pierce got promoted 3 ranks above his grade. Like, seriously. Like, what is, in fairness to Antonio Pierce, what's been his training to become a head coach? He lost in a high school program. It's one of the winningest high school programs in the world. He lost at Long Beach Poly. I mean, he wasn't even a good coach at Long Beach Poly. Think about that.
The Broncos improve 7-5. You're right. It was stark with Peyton on one side and then Pierce. The Raiders fall to 2-9. We get to see them on Black Friday. Get your shopping in, people. Elsewhere.
How about this for some numbers? Let me just give you some numbers here. I mean, Bo Nix in the last, you talk about a guy that, deserves to have some kind of credibility with him. All right. When you look at this, Bo Nix in the last 3 games, he's 71% completion percentage, 265 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, no interception, 116. It's tied for the best 3-game span by any rookie with Dak Prescott. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. right? Now, I know he's going against the Raiders who stink on defense, but he was in a lot of third and longs yesterday. Pat Graham decided to blitz and run a lot of cover zero yesterday, and he didn't phase him at all. Didn't phase him at all. Boom. And getting better too, Patrick. That's the thing. That's the mark of good coaching. Your team's getting better. Like, I'm not sure Brian Callahan's a good head coach, but he's actually gotten Will Levis to play better, and the team hasn't quit on him. They're playing it. They're playing together. Now, going to Houston was big for them because their owner's from Houston and they used to be the Houston Oilers. But still, I think to me, you got to give Nix and Sean a ton of credit. I can't imagine it. But now they got Cleveland coming at home. You think about it, we got Thanksgiving, we got Black Friday with Antonio Pierce, and then we get Denver, Cleveland. That ought to be a dandy too, huh?
Oh, looking forward to it. The Lions continue ho-hum. No offense, Elliott. Put a beat down on Indy. We can get to that in a second. But the Vikings continue to win on the margins. This is what O'Connell has done with all the close wins last year. Another close win. That's 9-2 for the Vikings. They survived the Bears 30-27 in overtime. Gave up 11 points in the final 22 seconds of regulation. But they hold on, and O'Connell continues to win. He's 9-2. With Sam Darnold at quarterback. You saw Caleb Williams. He said, look, he's even doing it with Sam Darnold. So they continue the Vikings at 9-2.
I mean, look, I think this game's really about the Bears defense. I mean, Caleb's playing better. I mean, you got to give them credit. They're playing better. He still does some things he can't do, like in overtime when he took that bad sack he shouldn't have taken. But he is improving. But I think the bigger concern, if I'm a Bears fan, is, and I've said it off season, is this whole notion that they're good on defense, right? They have this world-class defense. Well, you cannot run the Eberflus, Gus Bradley, Pete Carroll. You can't run that scheme unless you're dominant in the defensive front. You can't. And so here's what happens. They sack in the game, right? And this is a perfect example of what happens when you're too generic on offense, when you're too generic on defense, when you don't create any problems defensively for your opponent, which the Bears don't. They know who you're going to be in. But let's go through this real quick. Okay, so Minnesota gets the ball back, right? And they get it back at overtime. And the first down play, they lose 7 yards. Montez Sweat sacks them. So now we got 2nd and 17, right? We got 2nd and 17. And, we're going to now what's going to happen now? Okay, so they go 2nd and 17. He completes it for 7 yards because they're playing zone. They back off. He throws a check down to Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones takes it up the middle, and he gets a first down, right? And then 3rd and 10, he throws an inside route to, once again, to Jordan Addison. They never covered the route the whole time, right? So then, okay, all right, so they got one first down. Now they get a penalty. Now we're 1st and 15. Boom. Another, a short pass up the middle for 20 yards. Next thing you know, they throw an over route. It's all generic. They were in 2nd and 17, 1st and 15, 1st and 20, and they overcame every one of those situations to win the game because they're too vanilla on offense. They're too vanilla on defense.
A loss for the Bears. You would think Flus is going to be gone. They head to Detroit for Thanksgiving. Michael, the NFC West, we should discuss. It's fascinating. So a great win for McDonald and the Seahawks, 16-6 over the Cards. So the Seahawks entered yesterday in last place. They're now in first place, 6-5, pardon me, head-to-head win against the Cards. You have behind the Cardinals and behind now the Seahawks, the 49ers, we'll discuss in a bit, and of course the Rams who lost last night. But a big win. That's an impressive win, catching one there for the Seahawks yesterday.
Great win. And to hold them to 6 points and really did a wonderful job in that game. I think you got to credit. This is kind of what I was hoping McDonald would be like. As when I loved their over all year. I did. I thought their over was really a good play. And I thought the defense would respond. Now, he's made some changes at that linebacker position, which has really helped. And look, they've been able, Gino, even though he turned the ball over in the red zone again, he throws for 250. They didn't run the ball nearly as good as I thought they would, but they held Arizona from running the ball. Arizona had 14 carries for 49 yards. They couldn't run the ball. James Conner had 7 carries for 8 yards in the game. And so they took away Harrison. They took away Conner running the ball, and basically they let McBride have his day, and he had 12 catches for 133 yards. But they did a wonderful job on Murray. They kept him in the pocket. Murray only had 2 rushes for 9 yards. And they were great on third down. They couldn't convert a third down, the Cardinals, to save their life. They were 3 for 12. So credit them. I mean, I don't know who the best team is. I thought it was going to be Arizona, but I think to me, Seattle made a statement yesterday. They really did. That was but we're only going to get one team from the West. I mean, the Niners, we might as well talk about them, Patrick.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, they're too beat up, right? And some of their good players are too beat up and they're playing. You know, Kittle's trying to play through an injury, right? Debo's trying to play through an injury. You could tell Debo must not be 100% because he's dropping passes he never drops before, right? The ball went right through his hand on one of those interceptions. And then again, defensively, they're not good enough. San Francisco's not good enough in the defensive front to run the scheme they run. Nick Sorensen tried to do all sorts of things and blitzes. It just wasn't good enough. But I thought the telltale of that game was what Brady said after the game when when Tom Brennan said to him, hey, you know, this is the Packers. And Brady's like, hold on here now. Wait a minute. This was a good win for the Packers, but I wouldn't put him in that elite. I mean, because Jordan Love tried to throw 3 interceptions. They just didn't catch him. He really did. It wasn't like a clean game for him. Like you walked out of that stadium saying, wow, this guy's great. I think it was a clean game. It was a good game. But I think to me, there was more there than let's not anoint him to be the king of all kings.
49ers dipped to 5-6. Jacobs ran for 100 yards. You generally don't. I think it's been 55 regular season games since the 49ers gave up 100 yards on the ground. So they're going backwards defensively. The injuries on offense, they're in last place in the West. And conversely, take a look at the best division in football. The Lions are 10-1. The Vikings are 9-2. And now Green Bay, again, where are you with Big Daddy's Packers here? They're 8-3.
I think they're a problem for any team that plays them. I think they could beat anybody, and I think they could, you know, if they don't play their best, if Love doesn't play his best. But here's what I think the most important thing is. I think Seattle and Atlanta are going to win, or maybe Atlanta won't. But I think that the West winner and the South winner will not be as good as 2 and 3 in the North. I think that's right. I think we're going to get one team from the West, you know. Can Tampa overtake Atlanta? They're 5-6 and Atlanta's 6-5. Atlanta's got the Chargers this week, but Atlanta holds that 2-game series on them. But I would not, I mean, Atlanta's not any good on defense. Let's be clear. And the way Tampa played on offense, I know it was against the Giants, but the way they played, you got to take them into consideration.
Absolutely. The Dolphins, have they righted the ship over your boy, Mr. Mayo? Once they're out there, I got nothing to do with it.
Oh, man, between the lines, there's nothing I can do for him. Yeah, that's all. Unbelief.
What can you do in the Lions? It's a whole hum situation, Elliot, there in Indianapolis. We'll come back with the awards for Week 12 here on the GM Shuffle. Michael Lombardi.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
GM Shuffle, Michael Lombardi. I'm Patrick Meagher as we welcome you back. Week 12 wraps up Harbaugh Bowl here at SoFi with the Ravens laying 2.5 at the Chargers. Of course, the Harbaughs reunite. We'll get to the Week 12 awards presented by DraftKings. We should talk about a game that we haven't really touched on, and that is the Chiefs. So the Chiefs outlast in Carolina. Give Carolina credit, and maybe we'll start there and then get to the Chiefs. I thought Bryce Young actually pretty capable, looked comfortable, looked confident against a very good Chiefs defense. The Chiefs hold on. They don't cover the number. What'd you take? Let's start with Carolina. What'd you take from Carolina here?
You know, when it was 20-9 at the half, I thought, oh, this is just going to get ugly, right? I thought this was just going to, and then they battled their way back into it. And then the Chiefs couldn't close it out. I mean, the Chiefs couldn't until Mahomes has that big run in overtime. I was impressed with Young. I really was. I mean, Chuba Hubbard runs the ball. Young had 3 carries in the game. I mean, I thought he threw the ball as well as I've seen him throw it all year. And it isn't like they've got elite receivers on this team either now, you know? I was really impressed with how they held up. They're not any good on defense. I was expecting the Chiefs to come out and win this game convincingly. And there's elements that they did. They were 61% on third down. You know, they averaged 5.8 a play. They ran the football for 165. But to me, it was that they played with their food too long. They should have taken this game over in the second half, and they didn't, which has got to worry you a little bit, you know, because they score a touchdown in the third quarter to go up. And then the fourth quarter is just basically they have 2 drives, but in the fourth quarter, I mean, the second half defensively, the Cardinals went touchdown, field goal, and then they had the punt, and they got a touchdown to send the game into overtime and went the 2-pointer. So credit them for having a game plan this week. I don't know if they were looking ahead to the Raiders or not, but credit Carolina.
The Chiefs now 10-1. They're going to win that division, of course. Mahomes was great in the game, not just the 3 touchdowns, no picks. He ran the football. You mentioned the run there late. Ran the football well. It's Mahomes' magic. They improved to 10-1. Any concerns coming out of this for the Chiefs or no?
I think you got to be a little concerned about defensively. Where are they? What are they? I mean, are they were they as good as we suspect? Because I would not say Carolina's offense isn't going to be. I'll say this: Carolina probably get bet next week because everybody's thinking Carolina's offense is going to be better against Tampa. But we'll see. They host Tampa, comes into that stadium there, but. I don't know. I think to me, sometimes we've seen this from the Chiefs when they've had these big numbers, they don't cover. I thought they would have covered this one, especially coming off the loss. I thought they would have put their foot down and taken the game over. But credit Carolina, they protected the football. They didn't make the mistakes.
Week 12 awards, our DraftKings crowning moment, and it was late night with your boy Saquon.
Oh, you got to give him could there be a better moment when he has those 2 long runs? I mean, geez, oh man, right? It was pretty impressive. And this whole idea that, he went midnight same way for the Giants. I mean, come on, give me a break. Then he was hitting me with, Brady, Belichick can't win without Brady. Okay, right. Don Shula went 5 years without a playoff he had Dan Marino, right? Like, poor Phillip Rivers, how many Super Bowls did he win, right? I mean, come on. It's that narrative is so old. It takes a really good coach and a good quarterback to win a title. We know that. But it isn't just one guy alone that does it, right? We know that. That's just stupid. Anyway, the fraud of the week.
Yeah, no, that was just quickly. That's, of course, Mad Dog Sports Radio and Mr. ESPN. Now, Chris Russo, who David Letterman said, look, honey, they gave Donald Duck a radio show. And that is Michael Lombardi's impersonation of Mr. Russo. They've got their contact. Yeah, but here, Mike, going on.
I did that show with him on Friday. It was the anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, and he's as buff as I am on it, too. You thought we would have gone into it a little bit, and I've sent him books on it, too, to kind of get him to read up on it, and so, but he was so preoccupied with defending the Giants. He thought he was goddamn, you thought he was on at the last stand here. I mean, he was dug in. You got to get more time, Mike. You got to get more time. More time to see what? What am I getting more time for? It's that old adage, Patrick, when we're lost, but we're still making good time. Like, seriously, that doesn't make any sense.
What happens with Jones? So we saw the speech from Jones. What happens?
I think Jones could end up in San Francisco. I think Jones should sign with a place that he thinks he could get his career rehabilitated by the coach who's going to coach him. So that could be Minnesota. I think, to me, this year on a rental, he's got to think 2 years, right? Now, no one's going to claim the contract because you take the $11 million, which I don't think is really the biggest issue. If you want a future with the guy, it's the 25 that's guaranteed for injury. Like if I would claim him if I thought I could get the 25 injury guarantee taken away and just have a contract for next year. But I don't know if the agent would do that, right? And you're not allowed to talk to him until he clears the waiver wire. You're technically not allowed to talk to him until he clears the waiver wire. So I think Minnesota, I could see them. They need a backup. Nick Mullen actually threw a pass yesterday. San Francisco, Brendan Allen, they're going to have to get somebody because we don't know where Purdy is. I mean, nobody knows where Purdy is in terms of can he play next week? Is he going to be able to go into Buffalo where it's windy and cold and rainy or whatever it's going to be in Buffalo and throw the ball? That could be something to consider. I think Miami's expressed an interest. Dallas certainly has expressed an interest, but I don't know why he would go to a place that didn't have at least the look of an opening for next year. Like, why would I sign with you today? Unless because he's going to be a free agent anyway next year on a 1-year deal because the Giants are paying everything this year. So I just think I would rather go to a place where I thought I wanted to get coached by a coach who could really help me out. That's McVay, that's Kyle. Those are the kind of places.
DraftKings crowning moment. Plug your ears, Giants fan. Saquon Barkley crowning moments presented by DraftKings. DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, let's continue with the Week 12 awards. The fraud of the week, Michael. Who is it?
I think it's Houston. I think they've been fraudulent for a while, Patrick. I really do. I've been saying it. I mean, even that win against Dallas last week wasn't as impressive as we all thought it was. I mean, they've won some games, credit, but this offensive line is bad. It's really bad. That left guard for Houston, they were better off just putting a cone there and asking the defense to count to 3 Mississippi. I mean, 70 can't block anybody. I mean, it's just they got Jeffrey Simmons one-on-one with them, and they just couldn't wait to kill him. You know? So I think, to me, that they're fraudulent, and they're not good enough to hold up on I mean, when Will Levis makes you look bad, you better start thinking about some things.
Well, speaking of Will Levis, and by the way, that's for you, our old producer, Mark Perez, your Houston Texans frauds of the week. Fred Palermo with the best game plan in the same game.
I thought Tennessee did a really good job. They executed. Ridley made some critical plays. I mean, I thought that they played really well. They were in control of the game pretty much the whole time. I never felt like, if you took them, I never felt like they were in jeopardy of not, you've got 8 points, you got 7.5. I never felt like they were in jeopardy. I mean, which tells you a lot. Look, they held Houston. Houston couldn't run the ball. This team ran the ball, and this team ran 33 carries for 132 yards. Pollard was running the ball, and it wasn't because Levis carried. Levis had 8 carries for 10 yards. So, Pollard did some damage here, and I think ultimately Levis was the difference in the game. I mean, he made some great plays, 18 completions, a 70-yard touchdown pass. That's the best he's ever going to play.
Yeah, discovery phase, the Tennessee Titans trying to figure out what they have with the quarterback on the lamb. I do have a follow-up. We'll get to who's on the lamb, and it has to do with the Giants.
Well, I mean, Joe Shane should go on the lamb for me. As much as Russo defended him last week, I mean, tell me what this guy does good. Tell me, what has he done to improve? If I'm a Giant fan, I want to know, what have you done to improve my team? What have you done? Where is my team stronger than it was 3 years ago when you walked in the building? Tell me where that is. I'm not any better in the offensive line. I'm not any better at quarterback. I'm certainly not any better at running back. I mean, Tracy's a good player, can't hold on to the football. Oh, I've been drafting receivers. Am I better there? I don't think so. How about the secondary? Banks can't cover anybody. They went right after Banks like it was nobody's business. So, tell me where I've improved the team. Tell me where I've improved the team. I don't know how. See, this is the amazing thing for me is when you have PR on your side, like Shane must have, you can get away with anything. If I would have let Barkley go, I would have gotten ripped. I would have gotten killed. They'd have hung me in town square. I mean, some GMs in this league, some guys, they have no break. You can't get a break, right? He gets rid of Barkley. It's okay. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair, Shane did help the Eagles. He gave him the MVP. So.
It did. He did and stole him. And then here's the beautiful. They probably won't even get a compensatory pick for fucking Barkley. This is the worst part of it all. They won't even get a pick for Barkley because they signed Burns. They paid all that money for Burns. Well, Burns was a trade, so I don't know if that'll count. So maybe they will. Yeah, maybe they will. But they spent money.
On the lamb, Joe Shane. He should never have done Hard Knocks. It was a terrible look. It was a terrible look. If you don't know, now you know. And rookie quarterbacks, who do you have?
Bo Nix playing better than anybody right now, Patrick. I don't see how anybody can. I mean, watch him yesterday. He was good. He was fun to watch. It was good.
It really was. Yeah.
He was accurate with the football. His rhythm was good. He was confident. I mean, you go back and watch the Seattle opening day game where he's missing wide open guys to where he is now. You could honestly see the game has slowed down for him.
Yeah, he went from Bo Picks at the beginning of the year to legitimately not turning the football over and offensive rookie of the year. He is playing great ball. And frankly, 7-5. Look at the Broncos. Okay. I think this is a great game tonight, and it's not just the Harbaugh angle. We've got 2.5. We need it with Russo. You're laying it with the Ravens. What do you think, Ravens-Chargers tonight, Monday Night Football?
I'm not going against Lamar on this night. I think coming off a loss, I think the Chargers are good, but I think Chargers are a little bit like Washington, not that way, but a little bit ahead of themselves in the rebuild.
Yeah.
I think this will be a hard game. I do. Look, I don't count the Chargers out. They're mentally tough, but Baltimore's hard to run the ball on, right? the Chargers are hard to run the ball on, but Lamar is tough in these situations. So I think it'll be a fun game. I took Lamar in the, what he did to me in the, did I tell you what he did to me in the picks?
No.
I took Green Bay and he let me take it. And then he got pissed off during the conversation. And then no, you can't take Green Bay. If you want Green Bay, that's 6 points. He just made up a 6-point line. Like he just made it up. Like he just fucking made it up. And then I took the Raiders, and of course they had a ball to the 1-inch line and couldn't score.
Happy Thanksgiving and happy
You're
welcome,
welcome,
America. We've got the Giants and Cowboys. We'll see you then, GM Shuffle.